How you
Hello,
doing?
everybody. Thanks for coming.
I've
On such a beautiful day.
yes.
Wow, I've never had.
Well, I've been told
Can you see me?
I've been told I have the first question, and I apologize.
Listen, you guys, as long as we've got time, you can ask questions.
Well, I apologize if it's off topic, but I want to know why you think the Senate should vote to confirm Don Schott for the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, but not Judge Merrick Garland for the Supreme Court.
Two totally different courts, first of all. I mean, every court level, you have district court, you have appellate court, then you have the Supreme Court of the land. You know, that's where the decision is final. And I think it's pretty obvious that we had a 5-4 conservative liberal composition. I would say a composition that protects Wisconsin's Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, protects our First Amendment right to free speech and religious liberty, and that's put at risk. And so in such, politically charged atmosphere in such an important post, and let's face it, this nominee would flip that composition of the court. And so it's not my decision. This is Leader McConnell and Senator Grassley are the ones in control of the process, but I can completely support their viewpoint because I share it that at such a unique moment in time, with literally 7 to 8 months before the next election when the American people will decide the direction of the country, why not let them have the voice in deciding the direction of the court? There's no guarantees that we're going to win that election. We'll be able to install a Justice Scalia Jr., for example. So we're putting in the hands of the American people. I can't think of a more fair, a more democratic process, quite honestly. So, I'm perfectly comfortable with where we're at on that one. I believe I'm doing my job. There are two co-equal branches of government involved here. President Obama has every right to nominate somebody. He's done so. Our role as the other co-equal branch is advice and consent. Now, we advised, as Vice President Biden did in 1992, in a politicized atmosphere, it wouldn't be fair to the process, to the nominee. We're taking his advice. President Obama didn't take ours. The second part of that equation of the other co-equal branch is consent. We're going to withhold our consent and allow the American people to have a voice in that choice.
You're confident in the appointment of Don Schott, though?
Well, I don't know where that's going to go. I think I've written an op-ed that kind of lays out how Senator Baldwin completely blew up that process. I think we probably might have already had that appointment made and confirmed had she not violated the commission that we set up that works so well for both the Eastern and District courts and federal courts here in Wisconsin. And then for whatever reason, she blew that process up, violated the compact, violated the confidentiality of the process, submitted 8 names to the White House. Some of those nominees didn't even receive 1 vote from our commissioners. So I don't know why she did that. I think she was playing politics. She did it right when Senator Feingold announced I got accused of obstruction. Nothing could be further from the truth. I've been very cooperative in terms of getting those vacancies filled. Senator Baldwin blew up that process. But let's talk about the heroin hearing now.
Senator, why are we having this hearing in Waukesha County and not in Milwaukee County where there were a record number of opioid deaths last year?
Well, I think we're pretty close.
Why not there?
Well, I actually have talked to staff on why they chose this. It's a beautiful facility, obviously, here.
You didn't have a choice then?
Listen, I'm perfectly happy with where we're holding the hearing here. The important thing, and let's face it, you are all able to travel here, and I think I really appreciate that you do. This is an enormous and serious problem facing not only Wisconsin, but our nation. This affects every corner of America. And so we held a hearing on Tuesday in Washington, D.C. on the same issue, and here we are now in Pewaukee. By the way, this is our 4th field hearing. Our first one was in Tomah, Wisconsin on the VA healthcare. Second one was in Milwaukee on school choice. We had one up in Stevens Point on waters of the U.S. and now here on this very serious problem here. By the way, it's one advantage of having a United States Senator that is chairman of Homeland Security Government Affairs. I'm the one that decides to hold the hearings. I'm the one that decides where we hold these. I think it's extremely important that some of these hearings are held in the state so that, for example, it gets this kind of exposure on such a serious problem.
I suspect we're going to hear similar concerns from the two of you today,
Sure.
but different ways of how to solve the problem. What does a bipartisan heroin legislation, what does that look like?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure you're going to see any differences. The purpose of these hearings, every hearing that I call as the chairman of the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Government Affairs, is about laying out a reality. I've come from a manufacturing background. I've solved an awful lot of problems. It starts with properly defining, identifying the problem, admitting you have one. I'll talk about it in my opening statement, but the journey to get here to Pewaukee in this particular hearing really started with one of the priorities we set for the committee, which was border security. It's maybe not obvious, but after 15 hearings on border security, the conclusion, certainly from my standpoint, I think a number of members of our committee, among many causes, the root cause of our unsecured border is America's insatiable demand for drugs, because it's given rise to drug cartels who control whatever they want to in terms of the Mexican side of the border. They've destroyed public institutions throughout Central America. Our insatiable demand for drugs is not only causing the crime, the broken families, the overdoses, the broken lives, but it's also putting our nation at risk because it results in a very porous border. So this is drug abuse. Our insatiable demand for drugs is a nexus of so many problems plaguing this nation, which is why we're having this hearing today in Pewaukee. This is just one of a series. This is such an important and serious problem. We're going to continue to explore it. There are no easy solutions. We have to address the supply side, but we've been spending $25 billion per year on the war on drugs. Complete failure. You want evidence of it? In the 1980s, inflation-adjusted price of heroin was $3,260 per gram. You can buy a heroin apparently in Milwaukee today for $100 a gram, which equates to about $10 a hit, which is the price of a good craft beer in a fancy restaurant. This is unfortunately a very affordable addiction, and it's destroying people's lives. So now I'm hoping we don't see areas of disagreement. My approach as your senator is trying to find areas of agreement, and by the way, I've got a pretty good track record that way. By using that approach, trying to find areas of agreement that unify us as opposed to exploit our differences, we passed 69 pieces of legislation on my committee. 24 now have been signed into law. But you didn't know that. So again, this is all part of that same effort. Let's find the areas of agreement. Let's use these committee hearings to highlight a problem so that we can create the political will to actually start moving toward solutions which are going to be multiple in scope and also direction. We've got to address the supply side, the demand side, and the treatment side.
If the $25 billion for the war on drugs isn't working, though, should we be spending less than that on the war on drugs?
I think we need to figure out how can we spend it more effectively. General Kelly testified, former head of Southern Command, testified at a hearing on Tuesday, said that he has visibility of 90% of the drug flow, yet he does not have the resources to interdict it. Now, how can we be spending $25 billion? Part of the deal is we spend an awful lot through the State Department, spend very ineffectively. So that's part of our hearings. And, I'm Homeland Security and governmental affairs, so it's that oversight of the entire federal government. So we're trying to highlight and define these problems, and that's what this hearing is about, is let's identify it, let's really kick the tires on this problem so we can start developing solutions that will actually work.
Senator Johnson, earlier this year, you revealed that this problem actually hit home for you, that you had a nephew that passed away because of an overdose to heroin. How has that impacted your fight to fight against the war against drugs?
Well, it obviously personalizes it. It's certainly an added incentive, but it's not the incentive. I mean, I'm doing this because as chairman, I'm recognizing how drug abuse is a nexus for so many problems facing this nation. And it is, I pointed that out so that people understand this can affect anybody, and it is affecting people. In small and rural town Wisconsin, as well as the big cities. So I only point that out just to make sure that everybody understands that this can affect anybody. And of course, we're going to have witnesses today that will make that exact same point.
Do you feel that Narcan is only a Band-Aid fix? We've heard instances, where people go, they overdose, and then, they use the drug to get back up on their feet, and it seems like they know it's out there and it exists. But do you see people really wanting to change? Are there treatment facilities and resources out there that are truly working, or is that one area of expertise that still needs to be defined and revisited?
Well, obviously, we have to make Narcan available so people live, so that unlike my nephew who died of an overdose, people can be saved. So that's obviously, but it is a Band-Aid, you're right. Treatment is extremely difficult. I think we probably all know, and this is becoming so prevalent, we all know families have been affected by this. People that have been addicted to drugs and they get clean for a while and they just relapse. On the drive to this hearing, I had a buddy that I played softball for years. His daughter got involved with heroin addiction, served time in jail, got out, got rehabilitated. I just heard today she's right back in jail. So, I wish there was a silver bullet solution here. I wish there was a treatment program that we knew worked. I think we certainly should be looking at criminal justice reform. And I'd rather personally spend, for nonviolent drug users, for example, I'd much rather spend the money that we spend on incarceration on drug treatment. I think that's better redeployment of the assets. But again, there's controversies involved in all these issues, which is the point of this hearing, is let's get the facts on the table so we can try and find some common sense areas of agreement to start moving toward better solutions for this enormously complex and difficult problem.
And how do you see prescription drug abuse and regulation tying in with this, because they're so closely related for a lot of addictions?
It is, well, one of the pieces of legislation I actually introduced was a bill we call the PROP Act, which is really addressing a survey, well-intentioned, by CMS, that is asking and evaluating hospitals and providers based on patient satisfaction on pain management. Now, what that well-intentioned survey is doing, because then they base the results of those surveys on reimbursement, it's actually potentially having the very unintended negative consequence of driving doctors to overprescribe pain medication. And of course, we all know in too many cases, heroin addiction or fentanyl addiction begins with opioid, prescription pain medication. We also probably overprescribe them, and they're not used, and they're, those highly addictive drugs are sitting in people's medicine cabinets. So there's so many things that have to be done here. There's so many aspects to this particular problem, but certainly overprescription of opioid drugs is one of them, which kind of takes us back to that first field hearing we had in Toma, Wisconsin, where we had the findings among us that were overprescribed opioid drugs and resulted in their deaths as well. So again, enormous problem.
Is there any belief on your part that the use should be decriminalized? When you talked about treatment, should the use be decriminalized?
I think we need to take a look at every aspect of this problem. And that's certainly one of the things that, one of the things people do throw out there. I will say for my part, when I was asked in front of a group of about 300 seventh grade kids, and one of the little seventh graders stood up and said, Senator Johnson, would you legalize, would you be in support of legalizing marijuana? I mean, I'd never had to answer the question before. I had to answer in front of 300 seventh grade kids. At that point, I said, no, because the terrible signal to send to you. But listen, I understand what the issue is there. In our hearing on Tuesday, what we did find out, there's about, out of the 24 million Americans that last month used some illegal substance, the vast majority of that is marijuana. About 3 million are using the hard drugs. So all of this crime, so much of the profits of the drug cartels is being funneled into about 3 million Americans they're abusing this. So again, I'm just trying to lay out these realities so we can actually come to some common ground in terms of some solutions. But it's going to be a multifaceted solution. Any other questions? Great. Again, thank you all for highlighting this, because that's the first step is public education. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you so much.